Today, we're diving into one of the most pivotal years in American history, 1968. This year was packed with events that shaped the nation, from the civil rights movement to space exploration to political upheaval. Join me as we explore these defining moments of 1968. As the year started, the Vietnam War saw a major turning point with the Tet Offensive. The North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong forces launched a series of coordinated attacks on more than 100 cities and outposts in South Vietnam. Although militarily it was a setback for the attackers, it was a strategic victory in terms of swaying American public opinion against the war. The graphic images and reports from the front line shifted the tides of support and led to growing anti-war sentiment across the United States. On April 4, 1968, the world was stunned by the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in Memphis, Tennessee. Dr. King was a leading figure in the civil rights movement and advocated for nonviolent resistance to racial segregation and injustice. His death sparked riots in over 100 American cities, only intensifying the struggles for racial equality. The loss of such a profound leader left deep impact within the movement and on the nation. In the wake of Dr. King's assassination, Congress passed the Civil Rights Act of 1968, also known as the Fair Housing Act. Signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson on April 11th, this landmark legislation provided equal housing opportunities regardless of race, religion, or national origin. It was a critical step forward in the civil rights movement, addressing systemic discrimination within housing. Just 2 months later, on June 5, 1968, tragedy struck again. Robert F. Kennedy, a Democratic presidential candidate and former Attorney General and the brother to the late President John F. Kennedy, was assassinated in Los Angeles. He had just delivered his victory speech after winning the California primary when he was shot by Sirhan Sirhan. Kennedy's death was a significant blow to the nation, already reeling from the loss of Dr. King. From August 5th to 8th of 1968, the Republican National Convention took place in Miami, Florida. This event was significant for the nomination of Richard Nixon as the Republican candidate for president. Nixon's campaign capitalized on the public's desire for law and order amidst the social upheavals and violence of the times. His promise was to restore order and to end the Vietnam War, which resounded with many Americans. Nixon's selection of Spirit Agnew as his running mate also highlighted his strategy to appeal to the silent majority of voters who felt alienated by the more radical elements of the 1960s. Meanwhile, the Democratic National Convention was held in Chicago from August 26th to 29th, but it was marked with severe violence and chaos. Thousands of protesters clashed with police in what became known as the Chicago riots. The protests were largely against the Vietnam War and the political status quo. Excessive force used by police against demonstrators was broadcast on television, shocking viewers and highlighting the deep division within the country. The culmination of the year's political events took place with the presidential election, which was held on November 5, 1968. Richard Nixon won the election, defeating Democratic candidate Hubert Humphrey and independent candidate George Wallace. Nixon's victory marked a political party shift within the White House, as he promised to bring peace and order to the nation deeply divided by war and social unrest. Amidst the turmoil, 1968 also had moments of hope and inspiration. On December 21st, NASA launched the Apollo 8 mission, the first manned spacecraft to orbit the moon. Astronauts Frank Borman, James Lovell, and William Anders became the first to see the far side of the moon and the Earth rise from the lunar orbit. Their iconic Earthrise photo symbolized the vast potential of human achievement. 1968 was a year of profound change and turbulence within America. The events of that year have had lasting impacts on civil rights, politics, and space exploration. As we reflect on these moments, we can appreciate how they have shaped the nation that we live in today. I want to thank you for joining me today as we looked back on these past pivotal events of 1968. And I want to remind you to please don't forget to like, subscribe, and to hit that bell for more recapping the past.